So, welcome everybody. My name is Stephanie Elkins, and I'm a continuum of care coach and consultant with Be Present Care. And my focus really is to guide and provide education and support around caregiving and end-of-life conversations and conversations for individuals, families, and healthcare professionals. So I kind of consider myself a generalist in this end-of-life space and kind of meeting people where they're at. So that's kind of what I did in this situation, in the story that we'll be sharing with you. Trisha, do you want to just do a quick introduction as well?
Sure, I'm Trisha Jockler, and I'm certified as a thanatologist and an end-of-life doula. I'm a dementia practitioner and a grief support specialist. I'm the sole proprietor of On Bright Wings, alternative end-of-life service. We provide guidance, education, support at all phases of end-of-life, from aging and dementia on into bereavement.
Yeah.
So that's me.
Yeah. So we cover a lot of ground together in different kind of organizations and nonprofits and working together. So I wanted to, the reason why we wanted to start you with that music, we put that was Alma Deutscher. So hopefully all of you got to experience her a little bit. And that's something that we got introduced to from the Diva, from our Diva. That's not her real name, but she would be happy that we AKA'd her right today, right, Trisha, as a diva, because she owned who
Oh, well, she owned it.
So we're very excited to be here today. We are going, I just want to set the tone for today. I'm going to go over some grounding rules, letting you know how our presentation, our time together is going to be for the next hour or so. Some of you already know that we welcome you to be on video or not. It's whatever you're comfortable with, but we're so glad you're joining us. We are recording this presentation. We will be doing a quick check-in via chat in a little bit to see, just put you all in the room with us and sharing what you shared in the chat box. That is going to be our main form of communication here today, is through the chat box until we open it up. What we're going to be doing is sharing our perspective, our story, interchangeably for over a 2-week period of time with our journey with our Diva. And then afterwards, we're going to have some time for discussion and Q&A. We're also going to be sharing a couple slides throughout as well. So you might not be on video. I'll put it on slide for a little bit, and then we'll go back. So we're going to be keeping everybody on mute for a little bit. You can add stuff to the chat box, but we're really not going to we'll be reviewing who you are. But if you have questions or thoughts, we'll be reviewing those at the end of our talk. So thank you for that. Before we go further, we're so excited. This was Reimagine is just such a wonderful platform for so many of us to share. I know that many of you maybe have participated in other ones or leading as well. And so such a great opportunity for us to share and learn and be with and for each other. And with that in mind, I'm going to put on the screen the Reimagine intention, and Trisha's going to read it for us. So just give me 1 second before I put that on.
So take a minute to take a breath and center yourself so that our intention goes out to where it needs to go. There is no life without death, no love without loss. They are in constant complementary motion, but never before in our lives has the world stood so still. In the face of distance, illness, and isolation, we are here together, reimagining a changed world, kinder, slower, more just. We are reimagining the giving and the receiving of love, the cycles of loss and new beginnings, and what it means to be fully alive. We are here. and welcome.
All right. So on that note, we want to see who's with us today. So I'm just going to go through the list and welcome people as we go. So you can just see what you think about your divas. So who's joining us a little bit today? Jean Ando is here from New York City. I'm just going to go for first name. Sometimes, hi Jean. Sometimes I know Sheila Merle. So I know it's both names. We've already gone through that. Sheila Merle is from Nevada, California. Her diva word is strong. Shannon from Canada is also strong. Brigida in Los Angeles is wisdom. Jean's word, thank you for sharing, is feisty. That's one of my favorite words too. Debbie, hi Debbie, from Austin, Texas, is to me a diva is a prism. Lovely. Very descriptive words. Morgan, hi, from New Brunswick, Canada, courageous. Sheila Merle shares fierce, dramatic, authentic. And then what else do we have? So is there anybody else that wants to share a little bit more of their name, add their name to our box? Oh, Jen from Vancouver, low maintenance. Yeah, right. Right. Anybody else wants to share? And you don't have to, that's okay. Like I said, later on, we'll have opportunity for people to share in the chat box.
I love how you all zoomed in on the positive aspects of a diva. And I am in a way surprised. Some of these have to do with our diva, and some of them probably not. But I still enjoy that you're doing a more positive take on the diva role.
So I think it's now, Trisha, if you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about our diva. Trisha is going to give some context to our diva and what the beginning of our journey with her together. Trisha's known her for a while, so I'm going to hand it over to Trisha to kind of get started on our diva and our beginning experiences with her.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I noticed somebody asked where we are located, and I'm in Pasadena at the moment. And Stephanie, you're in Burbank?
I'm in Sherman Oaks.
California.
Okay. I'm a Valley girl.
Yeah, we're both Valley girls, just in different valleys. But we both serve the whole Los Angeles area. So I think our goal for having this presentation was first to honor my friend. The diva started out as my friend and then became my, I guess, my teacher, really. So we wanted to honor her, and we wanted to tell her story up to her last days to show how our skills as end-of-life specialists benefited her and the course of her family over a 2-week period. So also, since our story is about how Stephanie and I came together through the diva, we tell how a collaborative partnership developed intuitively and organically through our shared goal of caring for her. I first met the diva in 1985 when I moved into the same apartment complex that she lived in. We shared a love of theater, a love of music. She sang in a choir, I sang in a choir. She played the piano, I played the piano. And we both loved good food at fine restaurants. So there we had our social life all planned out. She was from Germany. Her father was a very successful and wealthy businessman, and she went to all the best schools. She was raised by governesses. It was very, very upper class. She was the oldest child in a family of 4 siblings. She was the only girl and the oldest. And they were Jewish. And when Hitler came to power, they fled Germany. They went on to Italy and then France, and then came to the United States and settled in New York. Against her father's wishes, she went to college, and she eventually graduated with a master's degree in library science. She worked for the UN for a time as a translator. She spoke 5 languages. Amazing lady. And she hung out in Greenwich Village with artists and actors and musicians of the time. So her path crossed those of soon-to-be famous people like Will Geer and the artist Leroy Neiman and his brother Earl, and Elie Wiesel, and I hope I'm saying that right, and the astrologist Linda Goodman. She sang in a choir at the Carnegie Hall directed by Leonard Bernstein. So she had quite a nice little resume, and of course, multiple myriad stories to go along with all of these characters in her life. After a brief marriage, she made her way to Los Angeles. She got a job as a librarian at USC, and she found her true home here. Our relationship was difficult. I could only take her in small doses. This is why I was so gratified to hear the thinking of a diva in such positive terms, because it helps me see her in a more well-rounded way. She could be frustrating. She monopolized the conversation. She needed to be center of attention. And as she got older, she got more intrusive. She got demanding and controlling and self-absorbed. She talked incessantly in run-on train of thought kinds of communications, and they were impossible to derail. You couldn't stop her once she started going. She was stubborn, she was obsessive, she had a penchant for conspiracy theories and the metaphysical. But the stories she told of her life were fascinating and delightful. She had a keen sense of humor, and she demanded center stage everywhere she went. And she got it. Her charisma charmed everyone. So about a year before she died, I sensed that she was starting to wind down, and I stepped up my visits and my contact with her, bringing my end-of-life expertise into our relationship. At first, she was fiercely independent, refused all my offers of help, but I finally said, "Diva, this is what I do. This is my work." And it was like a light bulb went off in her head, and she relinquished some control to me. And I got to run errands for her, and I got to take her to appointments. She was often in pain, pretty serious pain, but she refused to take even ibuprofen for fear that it would damage her kidneys. She had a pharmacy full of herbal and homeopathic remedies, which she took religiously. And ever the librarian, she researched the internet for all of these things, including, unfortunately, some quack sites. Her filter wasn't real good at being able to distinguish the truth from the charlatan. That included in her friendships too. I was not a charlatan.
You are not a charlatan.
You,
you weren't, and you are not.
So besides the constant back pain, she developed a familial tremor, is what it's called. It's like a non-Parkinson's, but she got so shaky that she couldn't even eat. The food would just fall off her fork, and she had to find other workarounds in order to get some nutrition into her. Things like liquids and protein drinks and things like that. She had dizzy spells. She developed a fear of falling, and her gait was so slow that we crept along at a snail's pace. She would only take one of my fingers as a support. That's all she wanted was a finger. And she just refused a cane. She refused a walker, anything that would help her. She slept more during the day. And even when she got sick, she refused for me to bring her food to her bedroom because she had to keep up her strength. So she didn't want to be coddled. She wanted to walk in there and get her meal on her own 2 feet. That's how strong her will to live was. She boasted she boasted that she had invented a brain exercise to help her retrieve forgotten information, and she was going to pass that along so that it could help people with dementia. She never got around to that one. Now, during this time, I started asking her to complete an advance directive. I started pushing for that, and she always skirted the issue. She needed to talk to her nephew, who was the executor of her estate. She couldn't think about it until she got her financial affairs in order. She needed help with other things first, so she'd always push me off. And then she told me that she'd decided not to die. She said there was still a lot of work to do on the planet, and her angels on the astral plane were giving her the information she needed to stay alive. Angels or not, I made sure that I had both of her nephews' contact information, and they all lived down in La Jolla, and they were her closest relatives. So I connected with them, and I gave them my information, and so we started developing a connection with them in preparation for what I knew was coming. Then in November, her favorite brother, who lived in La Jolla, went on hospice care. And she was too fragile to make the trip down to visit him, so she talked to him on the phone. She talked of singing Fauré's Requiem to him on the phone and how much he loved it. And she sang to him often, and the memory of his enjoyment of that music comforted her when he died. Then, unexpectedly, about 2 months later, her last remaining brother died. I'm the only one left, she told me. And that's where I will hand over to you, Stephanie. Actually, no, I have a little bit more.
Yeah,
because I've got to. I've got to.
This is when the urgency starts.
So now, just to give you a little bit of a timeline, Wednesday, February 12th is where we are now. I called the Diva and to ask what time I should come over for my weekly visit, and she could barely talk. She sounded so weak. She was croaking. She sounded on death's door. And so I dropped everything, immediately sped over to her. And I knew this was the beginning of the end. We called the doctor, had a phone consult. He diagnosed her with the flu. And so I got her the prescriptions that he had ordered, and I stayed with her that night. I slept with her in her bed. Maybe she slept a few hours, but it seemed to me that she talked and coughed incessantly for the whole night. I remember at one point going, "Diva, let's go to sleep." I was getting very whiny with her. I also contacted her nephews, who arranged to drive up the next day. Now, these things never happen in an orderly way. So the coronavirus was raging in China, and I was scheduled to teach a Zoom class, my very first. I'd never done anything on Zoom. And I was scheduled to do this at a Chinese school in Beijing. So that was starting like 2 days from then, February 14th. I needed to prepare. I needed help. So I called her nephews, and with their permission, I sent up the SOS flare on our local doula collective board. And Stephanie private messaged me immediately. And for the next 5 days, I taught my class, calling and checking in regularly and getting updates from Stephanie, and feeling very confident that she was in very good hands. And true to form, the Diva and Stephanie became bosom buddies as soon as they met. Yeah. Now I'll turn it over to you.
Well, just to share with you all, this is the post I got. This is the post to kind of that we got in our, just responding to a colleague. Um, so this is what the information. I'm just going to read it to you. Hello, dear colleagues. You can hear Trisha's voice now that you've heard it. I'm hoping someone can help me. A 97-year-old friend of mine has come down with the flu. The family who don't live locally are desperate for someone to visit for a couple of hours or so every day until Tuesday the 18th. This is not an imminent death situation, or more like a caregiver gig to make sure she has some meals and provide comfort and care. The family will pay. PM me if you're interested, and I'll give you the family contact information. She has a visit from a social worker on Tuesday, so interim help is needed until then. And I'm gladly do it, but I'm snowed under the ATM. I didn't know what ATM was. I had to kind of put it at the moment because I wasn't hip to the ATM comment. So I like Trisha said, I responded. And I was happy to. So I talked to Trisha on that Wednesday. I had a brief call with the nephew. And on Friday, Valentine's Day, I was there at 6 p.m. to do a handoff, if you will. The niece and nephew from South came up, took her to the doctor's appointment again, kind of got an update in the advanced healthcare directive. One of the other things that was going on at the same time is her decision maker was another nephew who ended up having cancer, terminal cancer. And so at the time, they had to transfer the agent to this other nephew. We'll call him the surfer. He's a surfer. So, and we weren't sure when and how to tell Diva about the nephew, and it really wasn't our role to do that as well. But we had to update the advanced healthcare directive they had in place with the new agent. So that was one of the priorities. I kind of had a priority of things that I needed to take care of when I met with the Diva, who didn't live too far away. So really what I worked out with the family was, can you come for the night? She can't be left alone. She's open for help. You're a friend of Trisha's. You're in the door. It was an automatic in. Even though Trisha and I hadn't met, you saw our contact. But it was an automatic in. I found a parking spot right in front. Diva saw me be able to get a parking spot right in front. So she's like, that's a sign. She's all good. So I went upstairs, kind of did a handoff with the niece and nephew. And then it was just Diva and I in her home. And I had to do a quick assessment of what her needs are. Usually in situations like this, when it's a caregiver companion, I maybe call an agency or somebody else. But in this circumstance, I was willing to stay overnight and really be, because I didn't want to have to go through one more person. I knew for this delicate situation and who she was as a diva, that if I got in, then I was golden, especially with Trisha's consent. So there we were in her room, a little bit of like what Trisha had, but I didn't have the years of background. I got to know her really quickly. Thankfully, at this point, she knew she needed support. She kind of was okay with, at that point, she did give in a little bit and let me in. But there were certain ways that things had to be done. When she had this frail little thing, but so headstrong, had this horrible cough, but she had a little teacup, little china teacup that was what she was going to cough into. So even it was like glamorous. So I had to clean up that teacup every single time. Her house had a beautiful rugs and crystals hanging, and I had to move them out of the way delicately so she could get into the bathroom, because it was very hard for her to get in and out. So really quick assessment of the home, making sure she was physically comfortable. It's the first time she was ever really on medications too. So she was adamant about her medications and when she took it, like she did her supplements, because this was all new, but she really was on top of it. Also, her storytelling of her entourage was amazing. So quickly, I call this the all-nighter, because that's what I had with our Diva, is an all-nighter of staying up with her and hearing her stories and knowing what was important to her. So as we went to the next day, we were kind of in good shape. She was comfortable. She was clean. I knew I was going to be there the next day. She had a trusted housekeeper that was also a companion who was part of her entourage, her and her family. She would share stories about her. The housekeeper became caregiver. So the house wasn't even as clean as it would be because she ended up becoming her driver to the supermarket on off days. But the priority was to keep her safe and clean. So that night I was doing a quick pass off to the dutiful companion housekeeper. And same sort of thing. I said, the post is on the door because she was, the post was up there. I gave her a list of things that she needed. I let her know about the teacup. I let her know that Joy was the only soap she would use because it didn't have the chemicals. And that I was going to be there the next morning at 10 a.m. to kind of relieve and get a break. And she was there with her friend. So that's how we left everything. I went on to the evening. So this is the next day. 10:30 p.m. the next day, about to go to sleep, I got a call from the dutiful caregiver, companion, housekeeper, that she was hard of breath, that she couldn't breathe. She was having trouble breathing. And so after calling what we call her cosmic daughter, who was her friend and her confidant, and got the permission from her to call 911, that's what she did. She called 911, called the family, called me. And this was the start of the new journey that we were on the next night in the hospital, in the ER, taking care of Diva. So I ended up not really thinking personally or professionally, what's the next steps for me? What do? I knew I just needed to be there with and for her so she could feel safe. And so that's what I did the next day. We were in ER. Everybody got to know her. She was still very verbal. She still had the cough, but she was very verbal. And by the next day, she was able to move up into to the ICU because they had to stay the other night. So we were moving through the day, and I just wanted to share also with you again the next text, because now things were changing, right? Now the idea of making sure Diva was okay, but having to be that ongoing contact with the family member, because it was not now just staying, she wasn't at home anymore. She was now in the hospital. So this is what I want to share with you. Oh, I'm actually not going to share right now. What I basically did the next day is I wanted to read you the basic text, because once again, this is straightforward. How do you talk with people and so on? And so she's in the hospital. And I wrote to the family, number one, she will be here till Tuesday or Wednesday. Two, her oxygen level is still low and has inflammation of lungs, so she is now taking steroids. Three, she is moving from observation status to inpatient status. She is more than likely to be able to stay in the same bed. Four, doctor and palliative care nurse says she qualifies for home and palliative care, not hospice. Five, palliative care will be in touch with nephew. It needs to be confirmed what medical equipment is covered, and will review later. He says that he will not discharge till it's confirmed she has 24-hour care at home. So now the question is, what is the situation she's going home to? She was very isolated. She was on the second floor. She was on the second floor. Is she safe there? She was having challenges with her landlord, but she loved her home. She was living there for 40 years. Her neighbor was also there for 40 years. This is what she knows. Does she move into assisted living? What can she afford? Does she have Medi-Cal? So then we had called out to the power of attorney, and the artist's niece and I worked on that. So the momentum of what to get in place, that was our conversation. Is she's be going home soon. She needs more care. She was going to be open to it. Does she go into skilled nursing to get rehab? These were now the conversations that we were having with the family, as well with the hospitalist team, as well as the palliative care team within the healthcare system. We talked with a nurse and the chaplain there, and everybody knew Diva because she would share her stories. And so they got a real sense of her. And then things changed again. Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock a.m. I got in at 9:15 a.m. and her situation changed once again. Her oxygen levels went really low. She couldn't speak anymore. She was in pain. She was rushed in to get a CAT scan of her lungs. They weren't sure what was going on with our diva. And then once again, we had to talk with the family and with the healthcare team to see what was going on, because right now her level, her condition was much different. And it was a switching of how are we getting back home to what's her final destination. And I'm going to hand it back over to Trisha, because now her class in China was over, which is another story in itself.
Yeah.
And what our relationship was like in terms of working with the healthcare team and their family in the healthcare system when the shift of care was different.
So, excuse me. A week now has transpired, a very short week, and it's gone from what I thought was going to be pretty much a caregiver situation to an end of life situation, possibly. Wednesday was the first time I saw her in the hospital, and she was lying in bed. She had a high flow oxygen mask covering her face. She wasn't responsive. And I finally met Stephanie. This was after a week of texting and phone calls and getting to know each other remotely. And then there she was in person. And she caught me up on everything. I was so in awe of how she had been able to coordinate all these different various services for the Diva, and she was really up on all the needs. So at that point, I had to take off my friend hat and go into my end of life practitioner hat. I was staying overnight. So Stephanie went home. She needed much more rest than just a night, but that's what she got. And it was a terrible night, terrible. In retrospect, it was probably terminal agitation is what we were seeing, but I didn't know whether she was having a reaction to the Ativan that they were giving her to calm her down, or just her being feisty. But she was struggling. She was pulling at her mask. She wanted the oxygen mask off. She had many IVs, and she was trying to pull those out. And so we were doing a lot of just, gently pulling her hands away from her face, away from the lines. And she fought all night. People die the way they've lived, and she was a fighter. And she was not going to have the peaceful death I had wished for her. That became very clear. She was going to fight. And that's what she did. She wanted the oxygen mask off. The phlebotomist came in every 2 hours, flicked on the light, and, poor Diva, she was maybe this skinny, and I don't know how they found veins, but they kept drawing blood. The respiratory therapist kept coming in. So it was not an easy night all the way around. She struggled throughout it. At one point, they decided to put the restraint mittens on her to keep her from pulling things off. That worked, but then she was very agitated about the mittens. And then the doctor came in and was not comfortable with mittens, so we had to take them off, and the struggling began again. And then in the middle of it all, she said one word: pain. And so I immediately told the nurse, and they gave her something for her pain, and she calmed down somewhat after that. It's just so important to really communicate, to know what's going on with somebody. Things are a little blurry now between the lack of the sleep and the passage of time. My memory's faded somewhat, but somewhere in the wee hours of the morning, I remember that the doctor called the nephew to get permission to transfer the Diva to palliative care. And then Thursday, do you want to take over from here, or shall I?
Well, so just a little more context to that, and then I'm going to give it back to you when the family comes. But, we were having, Diva was getting great care in the hospital, and people were on top of it. The palliative care team kind of came in at the beginning, but then now it's really like, let's talk about the comfort care and so on. So at the whole time that we were doing this, I was talking to the cosmic daughter, to saying, mother is with you, to calm her down, because that was the voice. So I would share that with her, as well as texting and same with Trisha, that the niece and nephew for down south were looking to come up and be with her. Her dutiful housekeeper, her companion, and her daughter came to be with her and was able to. So we were able to kind of make sure she had that support that was there with her. But yes, and also that after the CT scan, when we had the pulmonary doctor come in, it was sometimes very hard to get very straightforward. Where is she at? What does this look like? Is she dying? Because now her lungs were filled with, like, she had pneumonia. She had pneumonia now, and her lungs were filled to capacity. So it was hard to kind of get a straight of, like, and sometimes they're like, we were like, I would say, well, how long, how much time? And some kind of gave me side looks like, what are you asking of us in the healthcare? So it's just kind of trying to get some sense of time of where she's at. And nobody gave us a direct answer, but we are still keeping the oxygen levels, just trying to make sure she was comfortable. And it was really great. And once again, like, Trisha knew Diva for a long time, but only recently really started to get to know the family. So that Thursday night is really when the teams all came together. And it was interesting, and I really want Trisha to kind of explain this time between the medical, emotional conversations that can happen in a healthcare system, and having an outside person and having these important conversations with the family, with others, is so important. Because I want Trisha now to illustrate what it was like to have the family there and working with the different teams within the healthcare system.
When the surfer arrived with his wife and his young daughter, and college age, but still emotionally very young. And the hospital chaplain came in to talk with him, and I was asked to join in the conversation. The chaplain definitely had an agenda, and I'm not saying right, wrong, or whatever, but he wanted to talk with the surfer about the Diva's last wishes, which expressly said no intubation. She didn't want to be on a respirator. And the chaplain was advocating to ignore that, and to ignore her last wishes, and to intubate her. This was incredibly upsetting to the surfer, as you can imagine, because here was this decision that he thought had already been made, and now he was being asked to supersede her wishes and go with what the chaplain wanted. My role here was just to support them in whatever the decision was that he made, and just continuing to repeat that whatever his decision was the right decision. He did call his sister the artist, and together they made the decision not to intubate. Later, we thought that was the end of it. Later,
and just to give you some context before that, just, for different sides, Diva got to know this chaplain. They had communication. So he thought, she was kind of, when she was there, she was very present and so on. So I always try to get, kind of float it out, even though he was there, he is present, he did make his visits, but still advocating, what's written on paper and what the family knows. So it's kind of this, who he saw her at one moment, but where is she at now with her larger wishes? Okay, go on.
And I think it's a good point to have an advocate if you have an advanced care directive and you're going into the hospital, because as we saw, the hospital does not view advanced care directives as cut in stone, I'm going to adhere to this. They see it more as a guideline, open to interpretation and open to change. So just a message for all of us that we definitely get our healthcare advocacy in place. We went through that decision, and later on the chaplain came back in with the palliative care doctor, and now the chaplain wanted and had talked with the palliative care doctor, wanted to put her back on antibiotics because, again, felt like she was breathing easier, so therefore there was maybe room to think that she might recover a little bit. And again, great distress, just observing from the family. The surfer immediately was in tears because, again, here was a bit of hope that was being dangled out. He didn't know what to do. We reinforced the idea that, whatever his decision was the right one. He again called his sister down in La Jolla. They made the decision to restart the antibiotics. So, there was another intervention that, for good or for ill, was put out, and all I can do is look at the stress on the family with these changes. Understandably, he was advocating, he wanted her to live, and wonderful, but the strain on the family and the stress and the emotional burden that it placed on the family was profound and unnecessary. And so that's where I became a little resentful of the chaplain. As Stephanie said, besides the surfer and his family, the trusted housekeeper came with her family. And here's where I think Stephanie and my roles became really defined, because we were both holding space for everyone and anyone who came in. But at certain times, one member of a family would get overwhelmed and leave the room. And so for them not to be alone in their grief, we kind of split off. And so I would follow that person out, and just so that they wouldn't be alone. And I would hold space for them out in the hallway while Stephanie remained and did the same in the room. And I know it's not miraculous, but I think when you create these liminal spaces for the family, all of a sudden you're communicating on a different level. And all of a sudden you don't have to say things with words. We just knew, I would go out and she would hold space in the room, or vice versa. And we did a lot of nonverbal communication which kind of transcended all of the directives or the mundane, and really, I think, created a safe and holy space, even in the midst of all the tubes and the wires and everything in the hospital room.
Yeah.
I remember the young daughter at one point. I told her, she can still hear you, so anything you want to say to her, say it. And she said, I don't know what to say. And so I gave her Ira Byock's wonderful suggestions of, the things that matter most. I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And goodbye. And she spent some time with Diva and had a meaningful last moments with her.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about when the artist arrived?
So before that, so I did get to spend that Thursday night. That the Wednesday night was a troubling night for Trisha. Thursday night, when I was with Diva, wasn't so troubling. I was just able to hold her hand. Her oxygen levels, they did the nose. It wasn't as a heavy oxygen, and there wasn't as many people coming in and out of the room. So once again, there was a shift of more settling in. And one of the things that our Diva was very into also was numerology. And so I took it upon myself to kind of look up what are some of the numbers that resonated, because I had a sense now that the next day was going to be a special day and a day to honor our Diva. And this is what showed up for me, or showed up for Diva. As you can see here, choice is, and so what I was able to also share that night and that morning, as her artist niece was taking a train up the next day, is choice. This is what I would whisper in Diva's ear. Choice is perfect completion. It allows you to be free. It allows you to move forward. Not choosing is a choice that perpetuates the karmic suffering. Choice allows you to let go and move on to the next lesson. There are always more lessons. Never stop for too long. That only makes you frozen in a place of pain. I want to just read a little bit more of this. Listen to that small whisper in your mind. Follow the path towards peace and completion. Sometimes completion is a choice. You do not need to wait for others to agree with you or to apologize, because some people do not know how to ever admit they do something that hurts others. Often we have to learn to let go and complete without the rules from our psyche for perfect completion. So I was able to share that with Diva as her artist niece came to be with us. And this last day that was really special was, and we're going to kind of wrap the last piece here. It's not the last piece is not the requiem, which is what Trisha is going to share of how we did within a hospital environment provide a beautiful, safe space for the artist, for Diva, and for us to be there, and also for some of the healthcare professionals that were there with us. So I kind of want to share the requiem and that time, that special time that we were able to hold for for Diva.
Okay. So I came in and I was meeting the artist for the first time after talking with her on the phone. She was just as tiny as the Diva. And so I suggested that she get into bed with her. And we made her comfortable in bed, lying next to the Diva. And we sat there listening to the Requiem, and the artist shared memories, and she talked to the diva. And at some point, I offered them this meditation. So sorry about that. Meditation. May you be filled with beauty. Beauty before you, beauty behind you, beauty above you, beauty below you, beauty at your left, beauty at your right, beauty within you, beauty in your surroundings. May you be filled with beauty. And I just went up the chakras in that way, with that being the root chakra. And then I went to the second chakra and said, may you know comfort. Comfort before you, comfort behind you, comfort above you, comfort below you, comfort at your left, comfort at your right, comfort within you, comfort in your surroundings. May you be filled with comfort. And in that way went up to the solar plexus and trust, and then up to the heart and love, up to the fifth chakra with peace, and subsequently freedom and light as the music played. The artist told us later, all the frustrations and difficulties that filled my relationship with the diva, and I'm paraphrasing here, they all fell away in the last moments with her, and I was left with pure love. I'm so grateful that you two were there. You made it possible for me to finish my relationship with Diva and transcend all the difficulties, to be there in a loving, fully embracing way. Every moment was precious. It was a gift you made possible. Resolution, completion, loving. Around 2 p.m., the artist left to catch a train back to La Jolla, and Stephanie went with her, accompanying her. At 2:03, I sent the following text. Our diva slipped out so quietly and easily. And I included this well-known poem that provided much comfort for the family. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow, and I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry, I am not there. I did not die. And I said, she slipped out so quietly and easily. No distress, total peace. So at that point, the hospital, with their rules, has a wonderful rule that they let you be with your beloved for 3 hours after. And that's what I did. I played the Requiem over and over to her, and I stayed. After 3 hours, I felt something change in the room, is all I can say. There was a sense of completion. And I got up and I walked over to the window. It had a very large window, and looked down and looked out. And there below me was a playground with children playing. They were laughing and playing. They were life. And I watched them for a while. And then I let the nurse know I was ready for them to for the transport to come and take her. And the nurse came in. I helped her wash the body. She was surprised that I wanted to do that, but to her credit, I noticed that the cloth she gave me was warm, and that was comforting because I felt that it would feel good to our friend. I stayed with them, stayed a little longer. They put her in a body bag. They closed the bag. The gurney came. And again, they were surprised that I was there because people don't do this. And I helped put her on the gurney. And I accompanied the gurney on down to what they call the cold room, which is their morgue. And that's as far as I could go with her. But I did accompany her on that last part of her journey.
Yeah. It was, and then there was a bond still that was happening after she died. Her physical body died, and being in connection with the text still continued, and holding space for the family still continued. And when this opportunity to honor Diva and share the wonderful way we were able to connect around and be with and for her, this was a great opportunity. So we just wanted to share that with all of you. And the artist niece was so pleased that we were doing this to honor her in that way.
Okay. There is a bit of an addendum in that later, and this was probably a week or 2 weeks later, I did go back over and help them sort out her personal effects. And then they took us to dinner, and we had a wonderful time. The trusted housekeeper, the surfer and his family, the artist, and me and my husband. And we had a wonderful dinner at one of her favorite restaurants, celebrating our love for her.
Yeah. And I actually, on the other hand, also joined by visiting with the cosmic daughter, who was also so beside herself because they would talk at least 3 times a day for the last decade. And so for me to be able to honor that relationship for Diva and for the cosmic daughter, to be that extension because she was not able to go to the hospital and visit. So the idea of that her community and her entourage didn't felt so isolated as well.
And this is a whole nother story, but there was a lot of resentful feelings from the family towards the cosmic daughter. And one of the Diva's wishes had been for the daughter to have this special ring, jewelry. And that was a little bit of a moral quandary for me, because on the one hand, I wanted to honor her wishes, but at the same time, the family was very adamant about what they wanted to do. And so ultimately, I just stepped out of the picture and let them decide. And I think that was probably, I'm hoping that was the right decision, and that the diva understands, and
Yeah.
it's okay with her.
Yeah. So now we have a few more minutes to kind of see what your thoughts or questions or comments. Some of you might have kind of, as we were going along, what would you have done, understood going through this process? So I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody to see if you don't mind. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Or actually, if you can unmute yourselves, I guess, if you want to share or add something to the chat. I know I'll just read what Sheila Merle said. Sorry, I have to leave. This was beautiful and enlightening about how much an end-of-life care specialist can help in the process. Thank you so much. Jen writes, I just want to thank you for sharing this beautiful story. Thank you, Jen. Is there anybody else that has any questions or thoughts or comments? The details, the challenges. Yeah, we have contact information we can definitely share. We'll send an email out to everybody after this, so you have our contact information. The one thing I forgot to mention that was really amazing with the Divas, that we did laugh a lot as well. That we had this kind of understanding that through it all, that there was things that we could still have some lightness and play with. And that was really a joy. One of the things that I forgot was really like what were our focuses at different time. And one thing was it was a external catheter, but it kind of looked like a boat. Like that, and so we kind of were like, that was one of the things we could focus on, that she had the power of like getting changed or whatever. And it was one of those things that we were like, it was a new tool that we were kind of interested in, and of course making sure it's comfortable, and it was all of that, because that's just one of those things that is uncomfortable, having to pee and get up and being changed all the time. And so that was kind of a neat device that we kind of like laughed about and made teased about and so on. Shannon writes, thank you for all your work you do. Thank you for also sharing, sending love to everyone. Thank you.
I think this story also speaks to how quickly things can change and how we must remain flexible. I mean, the curveballs that come in, you think you have everything set in place, and then all of a sudden she's in the hospital. And then, so what became what I thought was going to be a caregiving situation turned into something quite different for Stephanie, and then ultimately for me. And then the curveballs this chaplain threw in, the curveballs Diva decided to throw in, and just staying in the moment, being mindful, staying in the moment, I think really helped us be effective and benefit the family and the Diva.
Yeah, I always say the practical and the profane was going on at the same time. All the doctors kind of coming in and being like, who are you? Are you on the list? What's your relationship with them? And going in and honoring that I represent the Diva and her family and all of that. It was just very, interesting, the practical and the profound that was constantly ebb and flowing. Jen writes, the teamwork that you exhibit is immensely important, and I appreciate that you shared some of the Diva's phrasing. I love her way of looking at the things, cosmic daughter and her angels on the astral plane helping her. Definitely they were with her. Debbie writes, simply amazing experience, and Diva's journey story lives on through both of you. Yes, it does. It does.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And the power of music and yeah, the voices. Yeah.
And, for me, I have new friendships. I have connected and continue to be in touch with the family down in La Jolla. And we share this common bond, but also we've developed on our own right a separate friendship.
Yeah. So I think that we could end right there in terms of, honoring the divas. What comes, that I also was thinking more of the drama that comes with the diva, the stories. I think the storytelling and wanting to share and just was so powerful and strong.
Such a drama queen.
And there's always stories, and I learned so much with her and from her during our time together. And I'm so glad I was able to be an extension and be with Trisha and honoring her friend. So I think with that, we'll say goodbye. If there's any other,
You want to put in the chat our contact information?
Let's see if I have that handy. I think I might.
That way, if you have any further questions or comments, you can contact us directly.
Let's see. Our link is in the registration. I'm trying to think if I have handy here. I can do mine.
I can write mine if you want, and oops, I didn't want to send that just to one person.
Once again, there's another amazing programs through Reimagine. I'm actually leading another panel program on facilitating on Behind the Red Tape, Beyond the Red Tape, disposition, ceremony, and legacy and financial planning. So other aspects of the details, logistics, like what to know. So that's going on, but there's another great programming going on.
And we both do death cafes and various death-related events.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in this age, everyone can be a part of, because we have to do everything virtually. So we will certainly alert you when our events are coming, and hope to see you.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.